I took the Illinois job, and I would say that was probably the best decision I have made in my career because it gave me coordinating opportunities at a place that, working for a defensive head coach, and so that changed the trajectory of my career.
And there's a lot of people talking about Maryland football, right? And the excitement of what you've done. And how have you gone about kind of galvanizing this community to be excited about Maryland football?
You know what, it's about these kids and the players in our program. And I've got Nick Saban's grandma chocolate chip cookie recipe that Kirby uses, that Lane uses, that Sark uses. I got it. And we just need to have the ingredients and then make the right decisions, stay healthy. And why not me? John Thompson did it in basketball here in this area at Georgetown. He was the first black head coach to win any championship. I want to be the first to do it and maybe set a standard. But if I don't, I'm going to die trying.
Real quick, before we get to the pod, I gotta tell you guys about the best way to fire on sports now that it's football season, Prize Picks. I've tried all the different apps, sports betting, sports books, daily fantasy, fantasy sports. Prize Picks is by far the best. On Prize Picks, it's unique because you're picking players instead of teams. Each player has a set stat projection for each game. So Prize Picks will say Josh Allen, 230 yards passing, you pick more or less than that. You pair a few together and you can win up to 100x your money. And the best part, Prize Picks has a new promo going on right now for me and my followers. Use code ADAMB or link in description and you get $50 instantly guaranteed in your account when you place just a $5 lineup. Put $5 in the app and you get $50 free guaranteed in your app. So go take advantage of that $50. You can turn that $50 into a ton of money now that it's football season. Code ADAMB, link in bio for that $50 bonus from Prize Picks. And guys, your support of my sponsors helps me a ton. So go download Prize Picks, use code ADAMB and place your first lineup at just $5 for $50 instantly. Coach, I appreciate you doing this.
No problem, man. I'm glad I finally get to do it.
Yeah, I've been wanting to have you on for a while and finally got to make it happen, like a week and a half before the season starts. So I appreciate you squeezing us in. It's funny, we were talking about it when I was here calling your spring game, but you recruited me briefly to Maryland when you were the OC for Randy Edsall, John Dunn. I think I broke John Dunn's heart when I went to Penn State.
We did. Big tight end that can run, and we were a tight end centric system. So I can remember Johnny D being a little disappointed in that.
I remember when I had to tell John Dunn that I was going to Penn State. I wanted to text him. I was like 16 years old. So I wanted to text him. I remember my dad being like, you need to call John Dunn and Randy Edsall and tell them. And that was like the first hard conversation I had to have in my life, probably stuttering the whole time. It's a good lesson when you're young though.
It is, and it's amazing in the recruiting process because I always use that analogy that, next to picking a partner, it'll probably be one of the first manly decisions you have to make as a young man. Making that transition is now navigating, telling grown men no. Yeah. And that process is hard. And, if you're a really good recruiter, my ultimate goal as a young recruiter was to make it really hard for you to tell me no. I was going to make it to where you didn't want to tell me no. Like it was like almost like you were letting me down because you told me no. And it's a tough deal, but it's one that I'm sure has helped shape you to where you've become as you've navigated your career. But first really man decision you had to make.
Stuff. You got to grow up fast. Your career has been awesome to follow through all your success as a coordinator, as play caller. Now what you've done here is really impressive. I mean, 8 wins 2 years in a row here is and you took over a program that wasn't in great shape when you took this place over. And I think people forget that sometimes. So I want to start with going back to taking this job in 2019, when you got here, what was the thing that surprised you the most when you took this job over as the head coach?
Well, again, because, in 2019, I had worked at Maryland 2 different stints. I'd been here as a young assistant under Ron Vanderlinden, who came in 97 when he replaced Coach Mark Duffner. And I was here with him. And then when we were let go as a staff and Coach Friedgen came in, I was able to see the fruits of the hard work of building it. And then, we won the ACC championship Coach Friedgen's first year. And won 30 games over the next 3 years total, or those first 3 years, and things were going well, and I started kind of growing. But I would say that the biggest thing in 2019 was just the apathy that where the program was. I mean, I was so, after coming in 97 and seeing it, and then riding the wave of what Ralph was able to do. A player had just passed away, Jordan McNair had just passed away, who I had a relationship with. There were very few people that wanted to even say that they were Maryland fans. There weren't a lot of people excited about Maryland football, and because of what was going through. And in a short period of time, we've gotten those people to at least give us a chance again. Yeah.
Take me through your mindset when you take over this job and you're trying to implement your culture and what you want it to be, and you're trying to do it as fast as possible, right? I mean, there's not you don't get a long time to figure that out, right? What are you doing to implement that, as soon as you possibly can?
It started the first day I got the job, man. One of the things that I took, and I call my time at Alabama kind of the icing on the cake for me, because I'd been a coordinator, a head coach, and I go back there. But one of the things I learned I went through an interview process with Coach Saban where he buys you a one-way ticket. You don't know when you're coming back, and you're trying to decide how much clothes do I pack. So you take a suit, you take a pair of jeans, and then you're there for 4 days, 5 days, and you're like, whoa, I gotta go to Walmart and get some. And one of the things that he does when you're there is he kind of gets you around everybody in the program, and you get a little piece of it. So what I tried to do to expedite building it was how I met with every player. I call it speed dating, where I met with every player that was in the program from the day after I accepted the job. I just sat in my office with an assistant, and they took notes on. I asked 2 questions. Yeah. What do you like most about the Maryland football program, and what things do you just hate most about the Maryland program? And I was able to learn a lot. When you talk to 100 and however many players were still in the program at the time, of the likes and dislikes. So it gave me a barometer of where I needed to start with my attention. Yeah. And to me, trust was a big factor. And there was the lack of trust. And there's no relationship of any kind in any relationship type organization, business, entity, if there's no trust. And so the first thing we went about building was trust. And creating standards.
Yeah. When you look back at your career, you mentioned the stops as a coordinator, as a head coach before you were here. Is there anything that sticks out as a pivotal moment in your career that kind of has shaped you into who you are now?
1,000%. I would say it was the transition from Florida to Illinois, and people don't know this story. I was saving it for my book or maybe my own, but I'll give it to you. I'm gonna give it to you. But there was a time when Ron Zook, who's on my staff now, was the head coach at Florida. When he got let go, we got let go. He was hired immediately at Illinois as the head coach, because he had won kind of like we did here. He won 8 games at Florida, but it wasn't good enough for Florida, and he was asked to leave. And he goes to Illinois, and I have a chance, obviously, to go with him, as an assistant, number one, first and foremost. But I also had a chance to stay on Urban's staff, and so I actually stayed on with Urban when he got the job at Florida for about a month. He left to go back to Utah and then to play in the Sugar Bowl at the time. And myself and Charlie Strong were the only holdovers that he kept. And when he came back, I spent probably 15 days in a row with Urban, because I was the recruiting coordinator at the time at Florida when we got let go. And so I got to spend a lot of quality time. And a pivotal moment for me was, I remember flying back from Buffalo, went to see a big D lineman up in Buffalo with Urban. And as we landed, Larry Fedora at the time was our coordinator at Florida, had gone with Zook as the coordinator at Illinois. He decided to go to Oklahoma State with Mike Gundy, who he'd worked together before. And so it opened up a coordinating opportunity at Illinois. So I'm at Florida, and we have recruited our butts off, and the national championships teams, Urban obviously created the foundation of them were guys like Chris Leak and Bubba Caldwell and Dallas Baker and those type of players, Channing Crowder and those guys who we brought there. And so the pivotal moment for me was I had a chance to stay at Florida and be an assistant and stay as a recruiting coordinator with Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
And I hadn't won a national championship ever before. Or I go to Illinois with Zook, and it is a total rebuild. It is. Whew. And I can remember struggling with that decision of like, man, if I stay here, I know we're close here. Mm-hmm. And I remember, and this is where this whole thing started, I remember calling Doug Williams. I got a picture of Doug over there, and he had worked at Navy with me. And I at that time, you didn't have a lot of older minority coaches that had these opportunities where here I am being offered a coordinator job at Illinois, and I'm thinking about staying at Florida as a recruiting coordinator because I'm like, I don't know if we can win at Illinois. And it's like, it's Florida. Yeah. And I chose hard. I took the Illinois job, and I can remember I struggled with it because we got off the plane, and Urban actually, it's a funny story, he followed me home. We got back like at 10 o'clock at night, and he sat on my couch till like 2 a.m. trying to convince me that, and we had just met each other because I was a holdover, but we spent time together, and he was telling me, you don't need to take the Illinois job.
Why would you go to Illinois?
Why would you go to Illinois? You can't win. And Zook is wearing me out. Like, if you ever been recruited by Ron Zook, he is relentless. And to the point where he texts me from somebody else's phone because I wasn't responding to him. And then when I call, it's him on the other line. He's like, hey, man, what are you doing? So I took the Illinois job, and I would say that was probably the best decision I have made in my career because it gave me coordinating opportunities at a place that, working for a defensive head coach in Zook. And it got the recruiting label off of me because the offense at Illinois in year 3, we went to the Rose Bowl. We had Rashard Mendenhall, Aurelius Ben, Juice Williams, a bunch of really good players that came through our program, and that changed the trajectory of my career. Yeah.
How much different was the Florida roster versus the Illinois roster when you got there? A little talent gap?
First of all, me and my guy Zook, we had to learn how to say Illinois and not Illinois. Don't put the S on it because, boy,
that would have been bad.
It's bad. And Zook actually did, I think, once or twice in his press conference, and I just remember that. Better learn to say it first. But no, a different roster. But I'm going to just tell you, the process in which Zook went about building Florida is similar to what we've had to do here, man. It starts with recruiting the right kind of people. Yeah. And in 3 years, we're in the Rose Bowl at Illinois. So like that decision was very pivotal for my career.
You've mentioned recruiting a few times now. Like one of the biggest demographics of who watches this show is young coaches, whether they're high school that want to get in college, young college coaches, GAs, analysts, all that stuff. And I talk a lot about recruiting and how that's the lifeblood of a job as a coach. But also, you just mentioned getting the recruiting label off of you. I know that's also a challenge. So when you're young and you get labeled as a young recruiter, like you got to also be able to develop players at some point and become a coordinator. So I want to talk about recruiting for a little bit, but talk about that a little bit with just how you went from being a young guy who was a great recruiter to someone who can coordinate an offense and become a head coach.
Well, it started with, the little known fact about my career is that my first 8 years I coached on defense. I played defense. I played safety in college, corner, and then I switched over when I got to West Point. Was the first time I coached on offense and triple option offense. So I learned offense in its purest form, which is triple option.
Gap integrity.
100%. Leverage numbers and angles. And so the one thing that I've always thought as a coach is, Ron Zook told me, I'll never forget, and I take a little bit from every head coach I work for. He says, the more things you can do, the more valuable you are. Yeah. Because he told a story how the VCR machine and the Benson, the owner of the Saints, VCR machine wasn't working, and he was walking by and he heard him cussing it, and he goes in to help him fix it, and the guy's like, man, it's good, I appreciate you doing that. And he's just like, the more things you can do. And so as a coach, your job is to do 3 things for me: manage, develop, and recruit. And unfortunately, some of us get this recruiting label and you don't get known to be able to manage players. I call that the lion tamers, the guys that can take, Smitty, Judy, Waddle, Ruggs, Ridley, and get them all to not bitch about getting the ball. Like those are lion tamers. So as a coach, I always say the coaches that work for me, you got to do 3 things. You got to recruit your position in your area really well. You've got to manage the players in your room, keep them out of my office, and then you got to develop them. Not just as a football player, but also as people because of the time you get to spend with them. And, some coaches do one of the three really well.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be around very long. And then some people do two of the three very well. And as a head coach, it's my job to maybe build up that skill set of the third, because it's my job to coach the coaches. And so I would say, to me, you put your time and energy in the things you don't do well. So if I know I'm a good recruiter, but I need to learn ball a little bit more, I should spend my off season studying ball. I should spend my off season talking to people that I have a lot of respect for the job they do and how they do it and what their processes are.
Yeah. Well, how would you describe your recruiting philosophy as a recruiter? How did you get so good at it?
If people like you, they buy from you.
Yeah.
And people like authenticity. You also have to know people. Like I tell people, I feel like Benjamin Button because I deal with a 18 to 22-year-old kid every day of my career.
Yeah.
Now just imagine if I was maybe Coach Belichick, where I saw Tom Brady come in at 21 and leave at 50. By the time he left, I would feel like I'm old. If this guy's old, then I must be really old.
Yeah.
Well, when you deal with an 18 to 22-year-old every year and I get a new crop, I don't know if you see that Carmelo commercial where he has the big six-button suit from the 80s, and then everybody now is wearing a tight button. Well, I had the Steve Harvey suits 10 years ago with the big cuff and the crease to
and now they're
skinny jeans, skinny pants with your ankles showing. And so what you got to do is be willing to change with the times. This generation we're recruiting, they're one of ones. They don't like mass production. They don't want like, hey, how do I, I go to Dick's Sporting Goods and I buy the same white T-shirt. They want something that, hey, they only made 10 of these. And so you have to find a way to individualize recruiting for today's athlete, where in the past you had to figure out who the champion was and recruit the champion. So it's always a moving target in recruiting. But I think the biggest piece of it is figuring out the person you're recruiting and what moves them.
Yeah.
And gear your messaging to that. And it starts with being honest and authentic, because people can see bull crap. Like people see through it. And if you're just talking, like a lot of people would think, hey, Lox is a used car salesman because he's a good recruiter. But I actually don't call kids a bunch. Like I learned that kids get tired of you calling them every day and just like, what are you doing? And so I recruit a little differently. I'm like, hey, you going to recruit me. I want, like, if you're trying to date a girl and you're the only one that's calling and she ain't calling you, like, come on, like, that ain't a good deal. Like, ooh. So I want to develop real relationships with the kids I recruit.
Yeah. Toughest loss of your recruiting career? Toughest recruiting loss?
Oh, man, that would be it was a receiver that went to Clemson just recently. Hurt himself he killed us in the championship game too, man. I'm getting old. I used to remember names, but he was from the inside of the state of Alabama. Big time receiver, played at Clemson, and you're gonna have to Google his name for me because my age is showing. I can remember his whole family were Alabama people, and when his grandmom, everybody, and I can remember FaceTiming him. I never felt good that I was getting them, but he always kept saying, Coach, you good, we good. Yeah. And I never had a comfort level. And I can remember being in my office in Alabama when he was leaving to go make his decision. And I can remember FaceTiming him because I wanted to see what color tie he had on, what he had on, and because that would tell you a little bit something. Yeah. And I thought he had put on like a red tie. So I'm thinking, okay, I think we're good. Yeah. And Phoenix City, Alabama, receiver from Phoenix City that went to Clemson.
Thomas, you find him?
Phoenix City, Alabama. Justin Ross.
You got it.
Justin Ross. Top player in the state of Alabama. I'm the coordinator. I'm the receiver coach. And this is a must-get guy. And I can remember, Coach, I'm watching because I thought we had him, but I never felt good.
Yeah. It's a gut feeling.
Gut feeling. You know when you got a kid or don't. Yeah. Even if they say, yeah, I'm coming. And Coach was walking down the hallway, and he's getting ready to make his decision. So everybody's sitting in their
Coach Saban?
Saban. Yeah. Everybody's in their offices like, all right, we're about to get him. And Coach actually stops in my office, and I am just sweaty palms like, come on, bro, what are you going to do? Yeah. And he picks up the Clemson hat, man, and this is like the state of he's from Alabama, man, but Clemson, that one was a gut punch because top player in the state of Alabama shouldn't leave Alabama. So that was a tough one for me. You know, Jacob Copeland, when I was at Bama as well, he went to Florida, and he got the much talked about deal where his mom and some family wasn't happy about the decision.
Yeah.
So it's those type of losses that that kind of sit with you. Now, when it comes to Maryland, toughest recruiting loss for me, man. Yeah. I'm pretty good around here. I usually do okay. I do okay.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's a tough sell when you're not winning championships, and kids want to be a part of winning championships. And we've gotten this program hopefully to the level where kids see that, you know what, there is a chance you can win a championship at Maryland.
Yeah. What does Coach Saban say when that happens? Does he say anything?
Oh, man. So the thing people don't know about Coach, it is so weird because as intense as he is, I'll never forget losing to Clemson in the last play of the game in the national championship game, and how he handled the post-game locker room after a loss compared to when we win and we don't win the right way. Yeah. I mean, so it wasn't like, he's lost a bunch of recruits in his life. He hasn't gotten them all. And so he was good about it, but for me, it's the pride of like, you know what, I'm a prideful guy. I'm a good recruiter. I'm at Bama. How do I lose the top player in the state of Alabama to Clemson? And that one kind of stung.
What would you say is the number one thing you learned being around Coach Saban for those years?
The development of players, man. People don't give him enough credit for the development of the players. Like, sure, he recruited, and we all recruited some really the cream of the crop in players.
Yeah.
But I always tell this story about this was my first aha moment of Alabama. I went there in 2016 as an analyst, and if you ever been there, the Saturday spring scrimmages, they're like, if you've been there, if you know kind of deal. Yeah. They're long, they're hard, intense, they're physical, intense. Yeah. And they usually have a coming out period where you put the ball at the 2-yard line. And I can remember Bo Scarborough going 90 for a touchdown. And before the defense got off the field, I remember Reuben Foster lighting into I'm not going to mention the name of a safety who wasn't in his gap where the ball hit. Now, usually on most teams, the coaches are hey, you need to be in the B gap, wherever the safety was. And Reuben, I'm talking about, is into this younger player about not being in this gap, and he actually mouthed off back to Reuben a little bit. And next thing I know, it is like a full-fledged brawl on the sideline, and it policed itself. And so the way that Coach practices, the practice schedule, the way he's able to develop players. I mean, Josh Jacobs, he was the third tailback in the program, but he got drafted in the first round, and a guy like Damian Harris, who was our starter, went in the third round. Yeah. Now, it doesn't mean Damian wasn't a good enough player, but it's just Coach's ability to develop players, the third team guy that normally doesn't get reps. He is smart enough to know, hey, let's two-spot it. And then by mid-season, this third-team tailback that's over on this field as a 3, and this guy's nicked up on this field as a 2, he's, instead of just having watch and doing cars, this guy has been developed. And so the biggest thing I learned was everything you do, good or bad, quality control it and figure out why it worked or why it didn't work, and attack the reasons it didn't work and try to model why it did work and make that a standard.
Yeah. Love it. When it comes to hiring a staff for you, you mentioned a little bit about coaches recruiting and being able to develop. When you got this job, or now when you're having to replace coaches, I know you've had pretty good retention, but you still have to replace coaches every now and then, find coordinators. Yeah, you brought in Josh Gaddis. What do you look for when you're building that staff and trying to find who are the core pieces that you're going to be working with?
It's so funny because, again, going to Alabama, I always use this analogy sometimes to get trouble, but it's like, it'd be like a Catholic person going to Rome and going to the Vatican, or a Jewish guy going to Mecca, or a Jewish guy going to Israel. Like, going to Alabama for me was like the icing on the cake for my career, because it kind of showed me some ways of doing things. One of the things that it showed me, he lost coordinators every year. At Alabama. They became head coaches, and his process, like I can remember him, one of the questions I asked as an analyst, because I went there intentionally, because I wanted to know, how do you win and go to championships every year? And I've been coaching 27 years, and the closest was when we went to the Orange Bowl here at Maryland in 2001. But how do you do that? And I can remember him saying it's like putting a puzzle together. And the reason he flies people out for 4 or 5 days and not the one-day interview and go out is he wants everybody in the program to get a feel, and then he'll go back and check the boxes. What did you think about them? I mean, how many people in an interview for a receiver job is sitting there talking to the head trainer, Jeff Allen, or spending 10 minutes with Scott Cochran? Like, you're an assistant. Like, why am I meeting with these guys? I was kind of thinking. And what it comes down to is it's like putting a puzzle together with a staff. And that, sure, you can hire all the top coordinators in the country, but that's not going to make it a great staff if it isn't fit the right way. And so, I think what goes in putting a staff together is more of a fit and a comfort level than it really is X's and O's, because the X's and O's, I'll tell anybody, like, I have a strategy for what I want to be on offense, defense, and special teams as a head coach. And the one thing I learned at Alabama, those things don't change. Whereas when I was the head coach at New Mexico, when I went from Doug Mallory to George Barlow as my D coordinator, George Barlow brings his playbook in and he puts in all new words, new terms, and one guy comes in and 40 guys have to learn a new language. And that stagnates the growth. And that's kind of what has happened and hurt Maryland football. If you look at when you change head coaches like as frequently as we had done it here, it's a new language when somebody comes in. And so, I would say it starts with making sure that the puzzle fits.
What's the toughest job interview you went on as an assistant? Maybe even one of the head coaching ones. Anyone grill you?
I would say the head coaching interviews were usually because the
what are those like?
I mean, when you're a young coach, and again, I'm a young minority coach, and I'm interviewing for jobs that you keep reading articles jobs that we're not getting. And so you can't help but be a little frustrated. Like, I can remember sitting at home. We had just lost in the Rose Bowl, the USC, and I was involved with a job at a school that borders the state of Maryland that we replayed a few times in West Virginia. And I can remember I'm supposed to get on a plane and fly out that morning, 6 a.m. to go to Pittsburgh as a finalist for this job. And I am watching, they're playing in the Fiesta Bowl against, I want to say Oklahoma or Boise. I can't remember who West Virginia was playing, but I can remember at halftime, they had an interim head coach at the time who passed since then, but West Virginia winds up winning the game and they wind up making the interim head coach, Bill Stewart, the head coach. But I was supposed to fly there that next morning. And I remember getting a call at 4 a.m. saying, hey, your flight's canceled and we've made a decision for our head coach and we appreciate your interest in the program. And so that was those are tough when you hear those, but the interview process for a head coach can be nerve-wracking if you don't know what to expect. Hence the reason why I started the coalition, the National Coalition for Minority Football Coaches, is to maybe take the ease and the sting off of that anxiety that comes around because you don't know. You haven't been there. Now, after you've interviewed for a couple of them, you become comfortable. I can remember, talking to Marcus Freeman as he's sitting outside of the Notre Dame athletic director's house. And he's part of the academy that we created in the coalition where we partner you up with an athletic director to serve as your mentor over a year. And I can remember him calling me and really kind of like, man, what do I expect? What's up? And I just remember saying, Marcus, bro, these kids want you to be their head coach. So you're going in there with your confidence. They want you because you've done some stuff. Make it about the players. It ain't about the X's and O's. It's about the players. They want you. And that comforting to have a guy that can give you that experience from going through it. Hopefully it was helpful for Marcus, but to me, I would say the head coaching interviews, because I didn't know what to expect because I didn't really have a lot of people I could call to say, hey, what's it? What's it like?
How did the coalition come to be? How'd you end up starting it?
I could just remember walking through. I always tell this story. I was on my property at my house when the pandemic kicked in, and my wife was down at our place in Florida, and I was home for like 2 months by myself. And my assistant at the time would come over, and we'd work from home because the world is shut down. And it was really the first time in my career, because even, having been fired, I always had to get the next job. And you never had a chance to sit down and quality control your career. Yeah. And now the world is shut down for 2 months, 3 months, where I'm left within my thoughts. And I started thinking, man, how grateful I should be, because I got fired at New Mexico. And here I am in 2019. I'm the head coach of the school I grew up rooting for as a kid. And how about that story? You go from being fired and thinking you'll never get another chance. And so I became really grateful, and I started thinking, how can I pay it forward? What can I do to pay this thing forward and maybe help the next Locks coming up through the ranks that wants to be a head coach, make it a little easier path for him? And I can remember calling Mike Tomlin, who at the time I had Dino, his son, on my team, and he and I came into this business around the same time, and I followed his path. He used to, when he was at William & Mary, he would work the Maryland camp when I was coaching here. Yeah. And I remember calling him saying, hey, Mike T, you didn't want Super Bowl. I mean, we're on the back nine of our career, and I want to do something. I grew up in an age as an assistant where I saw John Thompson, Nolan Richardson, and George Raveling create the Black Coaches Association, the BCA. And I saw John Thompson walk off the court at Capitol Center about Prop 48 or Prop 42 at the time. And I remember calling him saying, hey, Mike, man, we got to pay this thing forward, or this, Here I am. It was 20 minority head coaches when I became a head coach at New Mexico in 2009. And now it's 2019 and it's only 14 of us. Yeah. I was like, man, what can we do to make a difference? And I decided to start the National Coalition for Minority Football Coaches, and I wanted it to be football specific. The one thing I thought the BCA was great, that it tried to help all Black coaches or minority coaches. Yeah. But I wanted to be really football eccentric because of what the game had done for me and what it does for so many kids that have come out of situations like mine. Yeah.
You mentioned your time was it New Mexico State or New Mexico?
New Mexico. New Mexico. Lobos. Don't get it mixed up.
I know. It's a brutal thing to mix up. Yeah, I should have known that. You mentioned your time there and ended with getting fired at New Mexico. If you could go back right now and give yourself a piece of advice when you got that job, what would you tell yourself?
The first thing I wrote, my first agent I had before I had Jimmy Sexton, Trace Armstrong. I remember Trace, when I got let go, I called him like, what do I do? I had never failed at anything in my life. Yeah. And I was told, I'm fired, you're not good enough. And I'm like, I'm at loss for words. I mean, I'm like, what do I do? And I can remember him telling me to take out a journal and write down what you would do differently or what things you learned from this experience, because you are going to need them at some point if you get another opportunity. And the first thing I put on that book, that journal, was have fun. Yeah. I did not have fun when I became a head coach. It became like I wanted to prove to everybody that I could be a head coach. I wanted to win. And I was wired and just, it wasn't fun. And then I made rookie mistakes, maturity issues. And I wanted, and I say this now, and I want to make sure I say this on this one because I've never done this, but I publicly apologized to New Mexico. The fan base there, I wasn't ready for that job. And when you look back and you make excuses about why you didn't win, and you know what, it was a tough job. Yeah. But I learned so much from New Mexico and that experience that has benefited the University of Maryland. So I actually owe New Mexico some gratitude and thank you for allowing a young 38-year-old guy that had just gone to the Rose Bowl an opportunity to lead a program and maybe wasn't just ready yet. Yeah. And I was able to take those failures and those lessons from New Mexico, and it's helped me turn this one quicker than maybe most thought it would have.
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to ask, I'm sure there's things that you reflect on during your, 5 years here now that you think, I went through this when I was at New Mexico. I'm going to do it different now.
I tell people, think about, and I don't know if you have kids yet, but you read those baby books and for your first kid, and you get the nursery ready, and you're, it's like, I got this figured out. When the baby comes, he cries, I need to change him. And then all of a sudden the baby comes and you are drinking water out of a fire hydrant with the first one because you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. And all you're doing is reacting and putting out fires. But then you have the second baby, and now you're like, let me put him in the back seat, driving around the block here because the engine humming puts him to bed, or that's one of he needs to be changed cries.
Yeah.
Because the experience and sitting in the seat that I sit in now, if I hadn't gone through the New Mexico experience of being a head coach and failing, the way I did, I wouldn't be the head coach I am for Maryland.
Yeah, and one of the things you've been great at in your time at Maryland so far is just building a lot of excitement around this program. I mean, I was at Big Ten Media Day, and there's a lot of people talking about Maryland football, right? And the excitement of what you've done and what you've done the last couple of years, and now the roster you have in 2024. And I think there's also excitement, around in the community, selling more tickets and getting, if you win, they'll come here, right? And the fans get excited. How have you gone about kind of galvanizing this community to be excited about Maryland football?
You know what? It's about these kids and the players in our program and having pride for the name on the front of the jersey, as we like to say around here. I mean, this is a unique area in itself. And if you think of the benefits of going to school here, like imagine if you went to school here and you had a chance to do internships up at the ESPN studio with Scott Van Pelt. Yeah. It's hard to do in State College, Pennsylvania, unless you go to like one of those the radio stations, local radio stations there. But you're not close enough to Commerce because you're in a college town. Well,
you're always recruiting against Penn State, man.
Always, man. I just wanted to throw that one in there.
I love it. Yeah, it's good.
But no, I mean, our location is what makes this a great place, and Maryland has always been one of those special places, and I think we have a chance to. The excitement and the community is starting to see it. It is a build it and they have to come and they will come. And now with the landscape we're in, it used to be just on coaches to sell the tickets, to recruit the top players. But this landscape where supporters now can, if you want to win a championship, you can invest in your program legally, not embarrass your family. You could legally, if you want to win a championship in Maryland, I've got Nick Saban's grandma chocolate chip cookie recipe that Kirby uses, that Lane uses, that Sark uses. I got it. And we just need to have the ingredients and then make the right decisions, stay healthy. And, and you can do it here. And our fans, I think, are starting to see it. Yeah. Because we've won 8 games the last couple of years. And if you look at it, there was some meat left on the bone in 2 or 3 games where now you're talking about a 10-win Maryland team, which is a whole new atmosphere when you start winning 10, 11. And to me, I've been here when we've done that. Yeah. We won Ralph's first 3 years. We won 10 or more games every year. Yeah. So it's possible because it's happened before. And I think having been here and been a part of that process lends to where our fans now, we got to fill the shell because you don't get good players to want to come play where people don't, it's not important. Football is not important. I think football has become important here.
Yeah. You mentioned the changing landscape. And when I was driving here this morning, I was just thinking about, you took this job in 2019. You talk about a lot of things you've had to adapt to. COVID happened, transfer portal comes, NIL becomes a thing. And it's been probably each year constant change for you in figuring out what this whole thing looks like. How have you been good at adapting to each situation and kind of having, your manual that you had for how to do it in 2019 looks completely different right now, right?
100%. And this is where I always say that anytime you expand the room, anytime you add people with different views or from different backgrounds, it gives you a whole different perspective of how to fix things. I say this, one of the best qualities that I've had and been able to lean on to build Maryland is thinking back to Vanita Locksley, my mom, and how we didn't have a lot, but I didn't know we didn't have a lot. Yeah. She found a way to make ends meet. And when you have Damon Evans who's been at Georgia and he's faced some stuff, like you got to go through some stuff to learn. And Darryl Pines, our president, he was the dean of our engineering program. And, our perspective is change is inevitable. Like I've never been given anything, like nothing. I've had to figure things. I had to figure out how to get to college and how to get the grades and how to pay for it or earn a scholarship. And so these changes, these shifts in the landscape for a guy that's had to work for everything, you just know that, all right, it's changed and this is how you've got to play. These are the rules now. adapt or anticipate the change. I mean, I've been reading about, a lot of schools hiring general managers. I had a GM 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I've been following the NFL and modeling the NFL salary cap before NIL came into play because I don't have to reinvent the wheel. And you learn that when you work for Nick Saban, and you look at what the best do, and you see how you put your personality on and you make it yours. And so it wasn't a surprise that NIL was coming. It wasn't a surprise that the transfer portal at some point was going to be here. How are you going to handle it and manage it? And to me, you have to anticipate. And if it wasn't for Vanita Locksley and the way I was raised with, she just figured things out. Hey, let's get through this month. Yeah. All right, I'll take care of the electric bill this month, and I'll take care of this next month.
Yeah.
So that perseverance of I embraced that part of it.
Yeah. I love the figure it out mentality. I think that's like a common trait for super successful people, right? They just figure shit out.
Just figure it out, bro.
You mentioned the GM market just got reset with our boy Courtney Morgan at Alabama. Every GM in the country is asking for a raise right now. It's important though.
Yeah, when you step into that realm, now you got to produce. It is, and we don't set the market, man. The market is set by what value you create for an organization, and that's the part that our players are learning. That business side of college football. A lot of people think that, like, as I said this in a Big Ten meeting, that we're not competing with the SEC as the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. We're actually probably competing more with the NFL because all of a sudden the way this landscape has continued to shift and move, it used to be a time on Thursday night where that was college football night. Yeah. And now you turn on Thursday night and it's two NFL games and you got one or two college games and then, Saturdays, and now you're playing some NFL games on Saturdays a little earlier than the playoffs. And so this landscape is going to continue to change, and the teams that adapt quickest and anticipate the seismic shifts that have happened and navigate those, you give yourself a chance. And that's what we've tried to do here at Maryland.
Yeah. You've been good using the transfer portal. You've also kept your roster intact really well. I mean, Dustin was telling me on the way in here, I think it was you did no transfers this past year and kept everyone on the roster.
We had one that left after the portal window, but he was a graduate, and for the most part, I mean, I've always, the portal giveth and it taketh away. I mean, like anything else, like you don't want to be in a relationship with somebody that doesn't want to be there.
You don't want to beg them.
And I don't, and they don't want to play at a place that they're not happy. So I'm okay with that part of it. But one of the things that we've always tried to do, even before this, was find ways to create value within your organization that adds value, even more importantly than the financial piece. Yeah. We've done things around here, like we had a football investment club for 2-3 years, where we had the business school professor come over. We put supporters donated money to this investment club, and our team was broken up into 3 groups, and they had to pitch where they wanted to invest the money, and they learned about fiduciary experience of investing in that world, because a lot of them come here have never had checking accounts. Yeah, you ask a kid nowadays to write write a check to the pool company, and my daughter's like, how do you write a check? Because you just cash app. So we've tried to teach and put skills in place. We have a mentorship program where we have CEOs of powerful businesses and organizations in the DMV that serve as mentors. I mean, we've had guys that are billionaires serve as mentors for our football players, that when they get that outside of football, these people aren't mentoring them because they like football. They're here to say life after football, this is what it looks like. Yeah. Being so close to DC, Ellis McKinney, one of our, former O-lineman, he did an internship for Senator Ben Cardin on Capitol Hill because of our location. So we try to add some programming in our organization that benefit more further beyond than just the NIL or the wins and losses, to where we make it to where kids don't want to leave. Now, am I able to keep them on up? We had some transfers now. There was a point where we had a bunch of people transferring, but some that left for whatever reason, and it may be sometimes there's addition by subtraction, and it goes both ways. Not just, coaches leaving, myself or anybody, but nobody's bigger than the team. Yeah,
you've been great throughout your career at developing quarterbacks, and you're back in the quarterback room this season now, coaching quarterbacks yourself. Wanted to ask you, when you're evaluating a quarterback that you're thinking about bringing into play for you, what are the things, maybe 2 or 3 things you're looking for right away to say this guy can play in my system?
Well, it starts with they have to be able to pass the ball. There was a time where you'd have quarterbacks that had athletic ability but maybe struggled to throw. But for our system to work the way it's capable of working, they have to have the ability to win in the pocket as a passer, and especially on situational football, third down, red area, 2 minutes. So you have to have that ability. But then the next qualities that I'm looking for is, do you make the people around you better?
Yeah.
Like, are you the guy that elevates the room? When I see a really good quarterback, I shouldn't be able to tell if he's going with the 1s or the 3s. Some guys perform well with the 1s, and then you put them with the 3s, and there's nothing. Well, the good ones, they make the other people better. It's like taking the boat leader off the winning boat, putting them on a losing boat, and then the losing boat starts winning.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with a quarterback. And then the last thing is, for a good quarterback, most drives need to end in a kick.
Yeah.
And so we chart every drive we do that's a live period or a 2-minute and third down, like I chart, and we get drive percentages on how many, what percentage of your drives end in touchdowns, what percentages end in field goals, what percentages end in turnovers, what percentages end in, interceptions. And so, those 3 metrics for me are what I look for first and foremost: the ability to pass the ball, the ability to make the people around you better, elevate the people around you as a distributor, and then how are your drives ending? Because I'm okay if they end in punts. Because if you got good defense and they end in punts, you win the field position, reserve the right to punt. But a good quarterback, your drives are going to end in extra points, field goals, or punts.
Yeah. I know we talked a little bit about the adversity you faced in New Mexico, but I talk a lot on my show about overcoming adversity and just how anyone who's reached your level of success has been through some shit at some point, right? You go through some stuff. It's not always rainbows and butterflies, and you've got to find a way to battle through it. Can you think of a time in your career, maybe young career, maybe while you've been at Maryland, where there's been some adversity and you had to battle through, and how'd you ultimately overcome it?
Yeah, we faced that the last 2 years. I mean, actually, the last 3, because if you think of our last 3 seasons, the first year we went to the bowl game, we were 5-6, and we needed to win our last game of the year. And we started the year off fast, and we've hit this mid-season lull. And some of it's scheduling, some of it's, us building and developing our team. And, when you got to play Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State within a 4-week, 5-week window, and then you throw in Iowa or Wisconsin from the other side, which typically were the teams we picked up. Yeah. The middle part of our year has been a struggle, and we've had to win at the end and find ways to get, as I like to say, get the nose of the plane back up. Because, again, a year ago we were 5-0 or 4-1 somewhere. I don't remember what it was, but we were off to a good start, and then we hit a 4-game losing streak. Yeah. And, it's those tell you a lot about yourself, how you're able to finish. And finishing is a huge pillar of our program. We always talk about headbutting the finish in everything we do. And our team has learned how to finish, but the player-led piece of it that we have been missing, where is that piece that gets us through the middle of our schedule, where it's not riding the high wave and being, front runners, where we're winning, we're good, and when we're losing, we're really bad. Yeah. And so how do you get through those tough weeks of, you have to keep showing where there has been success. This is a generation, man, you cannot beat them down and tell them they're no good and tell them that they can't. This is a generation that when you say negative things to players, it's 7 times more powerful than one positive thing. So what we have to do is show that there have been some successful wins in those losses. Hey, here's a third down, we won. And here's why we won that third down. Now, these are 10 we didn't win, and here's why. So the quality control piece of showing why you did something well and why it worked and then why it didn't. Yeah. It fits in every piece of it. So I would say when you hit the tough times, what we've been able to do the last couple of years is our players haven't fractured. Like, we've got a really strong nucleus of culture where we know how to finish. What we've got to do is not be front runners. We can't start off fast and think we've arrived. And, we just got one game at a time, and it's a coaching cliche, but just that 1-0 approach.
Yeah. Hearing you talk about that reminded me of, I worked for Herm Edwards for 2 years, and he used to always say to me, like the young coaches, he said, before you do anything else, you got to give the players hope. If they don't have hope, they're done.
Yeah.
That's a good point, right?
And that's the part that when you develop your threes on your team, you have to give the threes hope because they could become 2s and 1s really quickly. And that's where I think the secret sauce of grandma's chocolate chip cookie recipe is. Those 3s and 4s developing, and now all of a sudden you're playing in a bowl game with those 2s and 3s, and they're ready to play, and it's why you have success in bowl games.
The last few things I got for you, Coach. I appreciate all your time. You've accomplished a lot in your career, obviously, but I know there's a lot more you want. What's the ultimate career goal for you? Yeah,
man, I came out and my big secret has been I got a sticky note, and it's funny because Scott Cochran, who coached at Bama, was our strength coach there, came and spoke to our team the other day, and he talked about, he wrote a sticky note of what his goals are, and I can remember him talking about the sticky note in the mirror in your bathroom, because you start your day and you end your day in your bathroom mirror, hopefully, if you're brushing your teeth. And my sticky note says win a national championship. I've had a chance to win one, obviously, at Alabama as an assistant, but it's never happened before for a minority coach. There's not been a black head coach win a national championship, and why not me, man? Why not me? John Thompson did it in basketball here in this area at Georgetown. He was the first black head coach to win any championship. Why not me here at Maryland? And so the ultimate goal would be to be that guy. And you know what? If I shoot for it, and like I told people there, I know, it's not about being a black head coach to win a national championship, but for me, I want to be the first to do it and maybe set a standard. But if I don't, I'm going to die trying.
I love it. What are the things, you talked about winning a national championship, what are the things at Maryland that you feel like still have to happen, whether it's with the team, commitment from the fans, that still need to happen in order for that to be realistic?
No, it starts with being able to recruit. I mean, it's the lifeblood of college football, the ability to attract good enough talent. And so what needs to happen is we need to be able to control this area. We're never going to get every player from the DMV to stay home. But if we ever have any chance to win, we got to keep the top 65%, the top 70% of them here. Like most of the great states do. They control their area because the number one reason people choose schools is still proximity to home. But now that finances are coming into play, that they're expanding now because you can get to places when you have the financial ability to. Well, it starts with, how do I keep the top players around here? And it starts with having a fan base that supports it, win, lose, or draw, because these kids want to play in crowded stadiums, man. I mean, they want to. It still matters. From a resource standpoint, you can't be third from the bottom in resources, but have a Vu Clicquot palette. You can't be third from the bottom in what you invest in it and expect to win a championship. And so. Do you have to be in the top 5? Maybe, but to me, the resources available and necessary to keep these top players here and to develop them with the right kind of coaches and the people that can win championships. Being a part of going to 3 straight national championships, I know how it needs to be set up. Does it have to be Alabama resource? No, man. I said I'm Vanita Locksley's son. I know how to do it on a budget, but I can't just. It's not just on Coach Locks anymore to get the top recruit to stay home. We have to have a crowded stadium. We have to have a fan base that supports it, win, lose, or draw. We have to have the ability to keep them home with a competitive. I don't want to. I mean, I like deals, man. I like getting a good deal on some things, and then if we're able to do that, I think that starts with if we just do those things. We've shown we can win 8. How do you win 11 or 12, which is what gets you in the playoffs when it expands? We're not as far off as some people think, but it starts with the resourcing of it and the support of it. kids want to see a rabid fan base. They want to see people that care, and we've got people that care.
Yeah.
We see it every day now as we've built this thing, but you know, everybody can do more, and it's always, what can I do more of?
I just thought of this, and I'm super curious to hear your answer. Favorite game of your career so far? You have one game that you can think of.
Come on, man. It has to be second and 26 national championship game.
Yeah.
You know, I've been on a record and have talked a lot about that game. Has a far bigger meaning for me. You know, when I talk about my son Miko, who passed in 2017, we opened up Mercedes-Benz Stadium that year. It was the first game played there, and it was preseason number 1 versus preseason number 2, Alabama versus Florida State, when we opened that stadium. And after the game, which we won, and we won pretty big margin, it was the last time I was in the tunnel after the game waiting to head back to the airport. It was the last time I had a chance to talk to my son Miko on the phone. Well, lo and behold, a full season goes, and we finished the year. The national championship game was played in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, where we started. And I'm the receiver coach, co-coordinator, and I got 3 true freshmen, and you know, Smitty, Devontae Smith, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, all 3 freshmen, and Calvin Ridley's a veteran player, and I'm coaching the receivers as the co-coordinator, and we get sacked on second and 26. It's a come from behind game. Jalen gets benched for Tua, and we throw a 9 ball, 4 verticals out of 3x1, and hit Smitty, the true freshman, right down the red line. And if you go back and look at it, and this is why he caught it at 42x5. I used to always tell a receiver that if they don't put their hands on you, you should be able to run through 42x5, 5 yards from the sideline, 42 yards down the field is where that deep ball should be thrown. And the guy was playing cover 2, Smitty. We worked widening and slipping a cover 2 corner so that you could hold that red line, because you don't want to go too wide, be out of bounds. And he did it exactly how he was coached to do, caught the winning touchdown. And we won the game at the last place I spoke to my son. And one of the last things he said to me was, "Hey, Pops, you guys may have a chance to win a championship. You may be able to get your first. Y'all got a pretty good team," because he watched the Florida State, Alabama opener. So that national championship gave me my first national championship as an assistant. It was at the place from an emotional standpoint. I was a wreck, because every day we pull up into the stadium to practice, we were in the same spot where we parked our bus, and you just kind of feel the energy. And, you know, for the receiver, like a true freshman to make the play in a championship game. And we had some extra help in that game, I think. Miko made sure I got at least 1 ring. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Great story. A great one to end on, Coach. I appreciate your time. Excited to see you win a national championship, man. I'm excited. I appreciate all your support and everything, of course, allowing us to come. Oh, not just young coaches watch your stuff. Old Coach Locks, I'll scroll through it. You did a good job, man. Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. For sure. Appreciate it, Coach. Yeah. Coach, this is where you meet with recruits. Yeah. You got the living room. It's in the living room. Yeah. We walked in here and you were bumping music in this place. I mean, it was cool. Got a little speaker back here somewhere. Got one of my little subwoofers in there. So you got to have a little boom. Okay. In there, right? Don't tell many people. It's got good bass. Got bass up in the ceiling. Can you show us some of what do we got over here? We got some game balls. We got game balls, a lot of good throughout the office, but I'd start with it's national championship ball here. I mean, there it is. This one here is the national championship game ball from the 26-23 overtime victory. That's cool. This one here means a lot to me because this was a 2001 ACC championship ball when I was here with Coach Friedgen. We beat NC State down there 23-19 to capture the ACC championship outright, and we played in the Orange Bowl that year. So a couple of these, that's why they're in the front. What was your 2001? What were you I was a running back coach, recruiting coordinator. Got it. So and was that the staff that had like James, Coach Franklin, was Bill O'Brien on that staff? No, Billy O came after. He replaced me. Replaced you? Yeah, he replaced me. But no, James was on this staff, and Charlie Taft, the late Charlie Taft, and Gary Blackney was our D coordinator. So really good staff. Sweet. Then you come over here, and you've got the Peach Bowl ball here. We played Tennessee in the Peach Bowl. Probably one of the best wins I've been a part of in terms of just like we dominated. I think it was like a 31-3 Then you've got my first win as a head coach ball, which is really not true as the head coach because I won against Rutgers as the interim, but this was
as the real head coach.
The real head coach, not the substitute school teacher.
79-0 is not a bad score for that one. Huh?
And tell you the irony of it is that 79 was also the number of Jordan McNair, who passed away, and it was so it was kind of significant, but we didn't go into this game saying that.
Yeah.
This one you might remember.
I remember that one well.
This is the.
I was on the team then.
Yeah, this is the non-handshake game, which I had, just for the record, I had zero to do with. I tell the story about it, but I can remember because James and I were great friends, and how I was talking to the offensive coordinator that, look, he's my friend, but if you're getting into a fist fight at 3 o'clock, you ain't shaking hands at lunch and hanging out before the fight, right? So I don't want to see y'all over there, taking pictures, exchanging jerseys. Well, Stephon Diggs, PJ Gallo, and I want to say Sean Davis may have taken it literally because we go out to flip the coin and they put their hands behind their back and we get a 15-yard penalty. Randy Edsel is up in the press box like, what the heck? I had no idea, and he definitely had no idea, but I didn't realize that they had literally taken when I said that, listen, James and I are friends, but I won't be shaking his hand before the game. I'll shake it after, and they took it literally. So, but we ended up winning the game, which we hadn't done there since, I think, 1962. It was the first time since 62 we won there on the road. So.
Yeah, that wasn't a good day for Penn State.
Yeah, probably, but it was early, It was early, and then I got my Stephon Diggs swag here, and another Penn State ball, man. We got our Auburn win game balls, the start of our run with the pinstripe bowl. So, just some memorabilia to show that we're building.
Yeah.
Up here, I got my quarterbacks. You got Lamar Jackson up here, number 8. Obviously, Tua. Tunga Vailoa, Deshaun Watson, some quarterbacks they're making a lot of money and they're doing some really good things, and so it's just a lot of stuff, man.
Love it. Appreciate it, Coach.
For sure.
Good stuff, man.